Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Matt here from Chill TCG. Before we get into this week's meta analysis, I just want to let you guys know that the Chill Series Last Chance Qualifier for our third season is coming up this Wednesday. It's 100% free to play. We still have 250 Battle Styles packs in the prize pool, but since this is our last tournament of the season, before our next season, which is obviously just going to start next week, we have this one last tournament. Now, yes, if you win, of course, you get great packs, you get the the appeal of winning these big tournaments, but you also get that 16th spot in our invitational tournament, which is coming up this Wednesday. Link to register for this tournament is going to be right down in the description below. I highly recommend it, and it would mean a lot to me if you guys registered and played this week. It's going to be a good one. I really can't not wait. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Okay. Anyway, before we get into that, guys, or before we get into the deck lists, I actually want to show you guys something super, super cool here. And this is going to be the breakdown for decks here. So now this is going to be, we're on dinodata.com for those of you guys who do not know. Dinodata is a really great resource. It's a phenomenal website to track all of the statistics and data and analytics for all of the online tournaments that are run on the Play.Limitless platform, which is perfect for us because that's typically what we look at every week. So big shout out to dinodata.app. You guys can go check it out. They have everything you might need. So right now we're looking at the deck breakdown. So this is the metagame for the entirety of all of the online tournaments on the Play.Limitless platform in the past 2 weeks. Of course, I wanted the past 2 weeks just so we had a little bit of a bigger sample size going into it. But this is it here. So right now, currently, we're looking at top 32 placements. I guess we could look at overall and just see what decks people are playing. But for right now, I think that just looking at top 32s, this is the graph, right? So at the top, we've got ADPization. I think that that's kind of safe. It's typically the most played deck in the majority of the tournaments, and it definitely is kind of standalone. I think that ADP is really good. There's no real clear counter to ADP other than maybe Eternatus, but ADP runs hammers, and that matchup's a lot more even than people think. It makes a lot of sense to see ADP up here, but right below ADP, we actually have Rapid Strike Urshafu. Now, in the last 2 weeks, especially with Azul winning the Players' Cup with Rapid Strike Urshafu, it definitely is known to be a phenomenal deck, and it is a really, really good deck. But I think that slowly the format is kind of turning around and turning against Rapid Strike Urshafu since it is a little bit easier to counter it, as opposed to things like ADP or maybe even Luke Metal, which we do see there at the third spot. But Rapid Strike Urshafu is still a phenomenal deck, but as we go down, we'll see a lot of Psychic-type archetypes here. And I think that there's going to be a lot of counter decks to Rapid Strike Urshafu that are going to be doing really well as well. But Rapid Strike Urshafu, I mean, right below ADP, almost tied with 71 top 32s in the last few weeks. So really phenomenal for sure. But in third place, we got Zacian Luke Metal. Now, Luke Metal is super, super good. And we're going to take a look at examples of all these lists in a minute. I just want to kind of break down the numbers here. Luke Metal's been on the rise. Honestly, it has a really good matchup against most things in the format right now. It does pretty well against like all of those Mewtwo decks for the most part. It also has a really good Rapid Strike Urshafu matchup. And it's at a matchup with Eturn and ADP is kind of 50-50 in some ways, but overall it has pretty decent matchups against those decks as well. So I think that Luke Metal is a really good pick. As we go farther down, we see Eturn and Pikarom. Those are just kind of the classics. They're going to be still really phenomenal. They're both kind of close, 56-48. Pikarom did just win a really big tournament recently, but Eturn always consistently does pretty well as well. But after that, we've got Mewtwo and Mew. So this is like the Psychic Mewtwo, Galaxy Mewtwo, as some people call it. We have Mad Party here. We got Blounds down there, another Welder deck. But then we have Victini Mewtwo. We have Grass Mewtwo, Straight Victini, Dragapult Urshafu. So a lot of Psychic decks in that kind of 5 to 10 rankings threshold, and I think that those are all the decks that really do counter Rapid Strike Urshafu. And those are phenomenal decks, so it's interesting. They're not played as much, of course, as some of the decks that are higher up here, but definitely pretty interesting to see. Now, if I click, winners, so these are the decks that have won tournaments in the last 2 weeks, we see that Luke Metal is actually 6th, and this is kind of what I was talking about, where, Luke Metal isn't as played as some of these other decks, so it might not have as many top 32s, but it has an incredible amount of wins. Luke Metal is phenomenal, and if you're playing a deck to win a tournament right now, Luke Metal might be your best choice. And then we have ADP, Mewtwo and Mew Galaxy, and Pikarom. We actually don't even see Rapid Strike Urshafu winning anything really here in the last week or so. So that's actually really important to note. Like I said, the meta and the format is really kind of turning around on Urshafu, and people are kind of just playing decks that have a good matchup against that deck because they know it's so good. Mewtwo and Mew Galaxy, Pikarom, Mad Party, Blacephalon, Grass Mewtwo, and Eternatus. These have been the decks that have won tournaments recently. All right, now to get into it, this one's actually really important here. So if we look at the actual leaderboards for decks in the standard format, this is for the entire Battle Styles format. And guys, I promise we're going to take a look at some deck lists here soon, but I wanted to cover the data. So these are just the leaderboards. So you get, obviously decks, archetypes get certain amount of points for placing, at a certain point in these tournaments. Similar to how PokeStats does it when we do our other monthly video, best decks video. But we can see here that Zacian is number 1 with the most instances, so the most decks that people have played, or the most people playing this deck. Of course, it is the number 1. However, if you look at the average points, this is exactly kind of what I want to look at. And the average here is the conversion rate for the decks. So, of course, the total points, it's going to be factored into, of course, the average points per deck, or per appearance, but also the amount of appearances that this deck has had in the tournament. So that's why ADP is typically higher up, because it's always the most played deck. And that's kind of the same with Rapid Check Urshafu, but we see that the conversion rate, the average points here, is a lot lower, actually, at 9.3. Eternatus here, less players, but very similar conversion rate to Zacian here. Pikarom is actually really high with almost 12 average points, so higher than the 3 above it. But then even above that, at number 5, Luke Metal, with only 775 instances in the past, since the format came out, it's actually at a 12.5 conversion rate. So within the top 10 decks, this is actually the most successful deck right now. So all of the data is really telling you that Luke Metal has the best win percentage, and it's honestly your best bet to win tournaments these days, unless the meta changes and some things change. But for right now, I mean, we have, of course, ADP, Eturn, Pikarom. Those are all really good decks. Welder Mewtwo has a pretty good conversion rate as well, with kind of a low sample size. But Luke Metal here, 12.5 average points. So really, Luke Metal seems to be on top of the format right now, in terms of the averages and the data. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. All right, anyway, now we're back on Limitless. We're going to take a look at some deck lists. This is what you guys came for, and something that I'm definitely super excited for. Okay, so a week ago was like April 26th, I believe, so I guess that's kind of where we'll start. Although we could probably look at some things below that, because I don't think we did coverage last week. So I'm going to just start here at Sunday Open on April 25th. This was a big standard tournament, 225 players. We love to see it. Jake Lesage, Jay Lesage here, one of my good friends from Canada, actually won with Mad Party. Now, Mad Party is a deck that really can pop off at any time. It's a really phenomenal list. It's not as consistent as some people might like it to be, even with Level Ball being printed. But I do think that Mad Party has a lot of advantages. This deck seems to be pretty standard. I know some people are playing Roxy in their list, but I think that this is probably, the most accepted way to play Mad Party, at least. But it's really good. I mean, of course, you want to discard those Pokemon as quickly as possible. Your Luke Metal matchup can be a little bit tricky. Your ADP matchup can be a little bit tricky. Same with Eturn. But it does really well against Urshafu. It does pretty well against things like Pikarom, or, of course, what else am I thinking of? ADP. Or not ADP, sorry. I just said ADP. What else was I thinking of? There's other decks that it does well against. Mewtwo decks. You do struggle with Dragapult, though, for sure. So the matchup spread isn't phenomenal, but it can be a really good counter pick. And if you draw well and you play well with this deck, you definitely have a chance to do really well. I oftentimes see this deck in the top 8s, honestly, in some of these bigger tournaments, which is kind of crazy to think about. So yeah, Mad Party, it's super cool. Big shout out to Jake Lesage as well. I mean, phenomenal player. And here's a Galaxy Mewtwo at number 2. So like I said, Mad Party did beat Mewtwo and Mew here in the finals. This is one of my favorite decks in the format right now. And honestly, I know that it's been performing really well in all of these Players' Cup qualifier pods as well. But, I mean, this deck is really good. You just have a lot of great options in almost any matchup that you could think of. Of course, we have the double Jiraiya GX. Our best option is to go second in Star Search most of the time. If we're going against ADP, we can get that Clear Vision GX off turn 1. It's tricky to get it with Latios GX because you need 4 Pokemon down on your board, but we can just copy that attack with Mewtwo and Mew GX. Great way to start the game. If we don't have access to Latios GX, Horror House is obviously a really good option, because we can go ahead and just smack into an ADP, with Poltergeist on our second turn, going second. And this is going to be really good because hopefully ADP isn't able to get an attack off either way, because you should be able to get 2 attacks into it with Poltergeist, which should KO it. Sometimes one hit KO it. That match, that's typically how you win the matchup. And then we have Trevnoir to kind of Night Watch and Stamp and Marnie mid to late game, and kind of keep our opponent at bay while we consistently just kind of hit for 150. And we have Calamitous Slash, another great option. If we get an Aurora Energy on the Mewtwo, it's something that can pretty much finish off any Pokemon in the game right now, as long as we get some nice damage off. So, a good combo, especially some of these VMAX Pokemon, is we Marnie, maybe we Night Watch, kind of drop their hand, limit their options, and then we finish off the KO with Calamitous Slash, which is going to be a really, really good option here. And we also have Incineroar GX to get some one-hit KOs if we need to, for some nice comeback potential. We even have Reshiram and Charizard, which paired with the Big Charm can be really good for that Outrage attack for low energy costs. It's a good deck. I really like it. It's disruptive. It seems pretty consistent. Between the 4 Marnie, the reset stamps, the 2 Swells, the Night Watch, I mean, this deck can really kind of be really detrimental in a lot of matchups. The 2 Stealthy Hoods helps with Rapid Strike Urshafu as well. Kind of just a counter pick right now in the format. And not really an underdog anymore, but a really phenomenal list. But did take the Elder Mad Party in the finals. I think that Galaxy Mewtwo has a pretty good Mad Party matchup between the Star Shield GX or Linear Attack, so you can kind of snipe the Sinisties on the bench. If you're playing Mew and you get that Mew off early, it can be really tricky for Mewtwo there. But it is what it is. And then right here we have an ADP. So let's just take a look at this ADP list that got third at the Sunday Open here. Nothing too crazy. It's not ADP hammers. It's just kind of max consistency ADP here. But we do have a Mew in the list, and I don't know if Mew's necessarily that good, although it probably is pretty good. It does probably help with your Urshafu matchup. I just don't know if it's typically really that necessary. Because if we're playing Urshafu and they go first and they get a really nice hot start at the beginning, we're probably going to struggle nonetheless. And I think maybe even just one Malolana can make the difference in this deck more than a Mew. But it really is what it is. I like the 2 Rusted Sword, 2 Air Balloons. It's definitely a pretty good pick here. Big Charm is probably going to be a better counter against Urshafu as well, to put on that ADP and kind of protect it from getting 2-hit KO'd most of the time. But yeah, this is ADP. So a lot of people are running Hammers. I do think that Hammers has the most potential. It definitely isn't the most consistent way to play ADP, but if you do hit 4 Hammers in a game and you get a nice hot start with ADP, there's almost no deck that's going to be able to take you down. And that's just something to keep in mind here. But here it is, ADP. I like it. I do kind of like it. He's playing a lower Pokemon count, so he's only got 2 Dedenne, 1 Crobat, 3 Zacian. Typically, we might see 4 Zacian, 3 Dedenne, just for max consistency. But he's kind of investing into other things like 2 Marnies, it looks like probably 4 Cherish Ball, 4 Switch. So it's an interesting list, for sure. I mean, not too surprised that it got a high placement here. Next up at 4th here, we actually do have a Rapid Strike Urshafu. So, this is a deck that a lot of people really like. It's a deck that's successful. And this is going to be actually the Minccino Draw Engine version, which is really good, except we are actually also running the Scoop Up Net version with 1 Jirachi, Giratina, Mewtwo, which is really interesting with the Zigzagoon. So it's kind of a combination of both, honestly, which I don't know if this is like the most proper way to play Urshafu, but it actually seems kind of cool. There's just a lot going on. You have a lot of different Pokemon, but I do like the 4 Quick Ball, 4 Calm, 3 Level Ball. Definitely give this deck a little bit more consistency here. And one thing I do like with Urshafus these days is people are running a 1 of Cheryl or a 1 of Phoebe. That can actually really be the difference a lot of times. It's a little bit easier to search out if you are running the straight Jirachi Scoop Up Net engine, but Minccino, it should be at least somewhat consistent as well. A little bit less easily to search out, trainer cards in specific, but I think that the Phoebe, the Cheryl's really good. This deck's actually interesting because we're running 4 Rapid Strikes, 4 Capture Energies, and 2 Basic Fighting, so we're not running the Dojo, and I think that Dojo is really good. But we do have the Goon with the Scoop Up Nets for some more damage modification. Karate Belt is really good. I like the Dojo Karate Belt combo when I'm playing Rapid Strike Urshafu, but this is a super interesting list for sure. And I think that the capture energies with a list like this is actually pretty needed, so it kind of makes a lot of sense. 2 reset stamps as well. Actually, we're not even running any switch cards in this list, which is really funny. No escape ropes. We just have 4 air balloons and the 4 scoop up nets, which I find to be very, very interesting. But I suppose your scoop up net into a single price Pokemon is going to be your pivot. I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to play the deck, but I suppose you don't need that many switching options because you're really not attacking that often with the deck, unless you go against things like Luke Metal. This deck could struggle a bit with Luke Metal for sure, but Urshafu kind of struggles with Luke Metal in general, and we do run a Phoebe, so that's kind of an option. But this is kind of a weird take, kind of a different take on Rapid Strike Urshafu, so I like to see it. All right, so that was kind of the top 4 of Sunday Open. I guess we can just quickly take a look at this Tempozard Crescephalon list here. Or maybe it's just straight Blounds. I don't know. It is actually straight Blounds, which is cool. This is kind of making a comeback, too. So a lot of times people would be playing the Tempozard Welder Box version where they have like 2 Blacephalon, 2 Cram, 2 Reshi. This list, we're just running 4 Blacephalon, no Reshizard, and 1 Cram. So we're going all in with the Blacephalon. And that is, of course, why we're running 17 energies in the deck, because we just like to take massive KOs on everything. I do think straight Blacephalon is actually a really good deck right now and deserves to be played more. To be 100% honest with you, it definitely deserves to see more play. And I like the list. It had a lot of success, I think, last week in a big tournament. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it was our own tournament. I don't know. But yeah, here it is. Straight Blounds. It's kind of a throwback. You don't really see straight Blacephalon a whole lot anymore, but I think it is kind of making a comeback. And it definitely has its advantages over Tempozard, but I do think Reshizard is really good. So maybe we want to just put 1 in the deck. I'm not sure. But yeah, shout out to David Hendrickson as well. Shout out to David Hendrickson, man. Okay, so that was the Sunday Open on April 25th. I guess the next thing that we can maybe look at in terms of these bigger tournaments here, Well, we can just take a look at Chill Series number 29. I did a top 16 deck lists here, but we might as well just cover the lists a little bit quickly because, you know, why not? And I actually think that what we want to do, and I'm going to go back, we're going to look at the metagame, even though we kind of did that with Dino Data a little bit. So the metagame with Sunday Open, we had 26 ADP, 22 Urshafu, 19 Mad Party, Eturn, and then Luke Metal at the 5th most played deck. And then we have, you know, Galaxy Mewtwo, Pikarom, Dragapult, Blounds, Victini, Mewtwo, Victini, Orbeetle at 6th. Shout out to Orbeetle. So this is kind of the metagame for Sunday Open. Nothing too crazy here. And I expect that we're probably going to see similar metagames throughout the rest of the tournament. ADP with only 11% of the meta share is actually not that crazy. Sometimes that gets up to about 20% in some tournaments. So actually not that crazy to see, to be 100% honest with you. So, all right, let's take a look at Chill Series number 29. We did, of course, do a separate video where we looked at the top 16 lists, but if we look at the metagame, it's extremely similar, except, you know, Zacian, ADP, and Rapid Chick Urshifu were much closer together. They were literally tied for the most played decks, both at about 13.5% of the meta share, which is interesting, but Luke Metal was 3rd, and Luke Metal did actually win this tournament, or no, Pikarom won this tournament, actually. But Luke Metal won the week before, which is probably a big reason why it was the 3rd most played deck at 8% of the meta share, above Galaxy Mewtwo, Eturn, Mad Party, Pikarom, Blounds, Victini, all the good stuff here. So yeah, I mean, you can kind of see how the meta is a little bit trending. Chill Series is a bit different because people tend to play, people tend to play decks that are kind of based around the decks that people have played over the last week. So our meta is typically defined by all the other tournaments, like the Sunday Open, which was a few days prior. But this is definitely interesting, right? Definitely pretty interesting. I did make a video on this Pikarom list, but I guess we can just show it real quick here. It's literally just Peak here. Nothing too crazy, although we're not running... what is it? In this list, we're not running Yell Grunt or any extra like energy removal on top of the 4 hammers. But other than that, it's super just normal, super consistent. The 2 Stealthy Hoods thrown in here helps with your Urshifu matchup. Running 3 Bolton instead of 4, 2 Reset Stamps, 4 Marnie. It's peak. It's peak. I mean, when you're running 2 Stamps, 4 Marnie, 4 Hammers, and with energy acceleration like Pikarom, you're probably going to win some games. And it just so happens that Adam Calumet did win probably the biggest tournament of last week, right? So definitely super cool. So that's the peak list. Andrew here was playing ADP. I think this was super standard, just normal ADP here. No hammers, max consistency. This seems to be the highest placing ADP archetype that we've seen. This guy's running 4 Zacians, 3 Dedennes, like I kind of mentioned in the last ADP list. He's not running the Mew. He's only running 1 Marnie, but everything else is pretty much normal here. I like the 2 Escape Rope, 2 Switch as well. I don't know if you need 2 Rusted Swords, so I think that's fine, as well as the Great Catcher. The energy count here is pretty average as well, pretty normal. So this is ADP. This is Andrew's ADP. Definitely pretty cool. We looked at Galaxy Mewtwo before, but this is Leandra, so let's just take a look at his Galaxy Mewtwo list and see if there's anything that jumps out at us. This is the same as the last list I think we looked at, literally the exact same, so nothing too crazy here. Kind of absorb it, take it in. It's a kind of a crazy list to look at, but it's actually phenomenal. Well, we're just going to keep moving here. Here's something different. This is Azul GG, who actually got 4th at our 450-player tournament, playing Mewtwo, Rillaboom, Eggrow. This list is phenomenal, honestly. I really like Mewtwo, Eggrow. I find it to be one of the most kind of consistent and I just sort of well-positioned decks in the format right now. It's got a lot of options. Like, realistically, if you're able to go second, you get the super growth out, you level up you evolve up your Rillaboom, you just start rolling from there. The Vileplume GX really helps in other Mewtwo matchups. It's like a consistent turn 2 180. We have Elegant Soul, which is 190 for 3, but we also can Jet Punch, hit things on the bench there. Or we can just do 150 Calming Hurricane while healing damage, and just kind of build up energies until we can Tropical Hour GX, which is going to be so good in a lot of matchups, specifically against things like ADP or Pikarom. That's really where this deck, obviously does really well against. Hammers can kind of stop it for a bit, but for the most part, I think Luke Metal could also be kind of an issue for this deck, but other than that, I do think that, it is a really phenomenal list. Incineroar GX just makes a lot of sense here. Dragonite GX as well, which is a nice 270 for 5 energy, for 5 grass energies, which is going to be super cool here. I like the Wonder Lab as well. I know that Azul kind of wanted to change his list going into the tournament. I think he ended up forgetting to do that, so he had to play the list that he submitted, which was different than the list that he wanted to play originally, but of course he did really well, got top 4, so it is what it is. The Wonder Lab is cool with the Chaotic Swell. I think that when you're piling so many energies on your Pokemon like you do with this deck, it's pretty easy to get at least 4 or 5 energies on your Pokemon, so Wonder Lab actually seems really smart in the list, and I do like it, although there is a lot of Chaotic Swell in the format. a lot of stadiums in general. That Wonders Lab is probably not sticking around too much, but if it sticks around for a turn or two in some matchups, it really could be the difference. We're running the Tag Call engine, so I think if you're running Tag Call, Malolana, Tugus Mahala, and Cynthia Caitlyn, as well as the healing and the big terms with this deck, you're really just kind of outliving a lot of things, right? And that's really what this deck survives on. It does nice, consistent damage. It heals. It's got, some pretty tanky Pokemon. And if you get that Rillaboom out, the energy acceleration is really consistent. So I like this deck. I really do. We haven't seen a lot of super high placements with it. This is kind of like the first time in the past week that it's gotten like a top 4. Of course, piloted by Azul, Players Cup champion, one of the best players. But I still think that it is a really good deck. We even had one at 13th here, 76ers. So really, really cool. I kind of want to take a look at this Eturn list, just because we haven't taken a look at Eturn today so far. And this is actually Scoop Up Net Eternatus VMAX with 4 Zigzagoons. This, in my opinion, is actually the best way to play the list. And I say that just because you're playing against a lot of Mewtwo's right now, a lot of tag team decks. I think the 1 Phoebe is necessary, so you have a chance to beat Luke Metal, which, like I said, has a really good matchup against Eturn. But with the 4 Zigzagoons and the 4 Scoop Up Nets, you're pretty consistently able to just add some extra damage counters and one-hit KO those Mewtwo's or those ADPs. So I think that this Eturn list is kind of the best Eturn to be playing right now for the current format. You're still going to struggle with Urshafu. That's just how it goes. You can't really change that too much. I mean, we're running 2 weak guards, but other than that, you know what I mean? You're going to struggle. It's going to be tough, but there's not much you can really do about that. We have the Hoopa in here, which has actually been banned on PTCGO because it's bugged and no one's fixed it. But yeah, I mean, this was before that ban happened or that suspension happened, so he had it in the list. But no shenanigans were pulled during the tournament. Yeah, there it is. That was Chill Series 29, 450 players, I believe. That was the biggest tournament of the week. Yeah, it seems to be the case. If we look at Limitless, so the LOS Weekly this week, was this standard? Yeah, okay, this was standard, okay. Now, here we go. We're getting into the good stuff here. I love the Limitless formats. They always have the greatest decks, like the best metagame. We can see here that Zacian was, of course, ADP Zacian, the number 1 played deck, 11%, but Galaxy Mewtwo and Mew was actually second at 10% of the meta. So that's kind of the first time we've seen it be that high on the meta, and Limitless is a really big tournament, so definitely super cool. Kind of just shows you how viable this Mewtwo deck really is. And then we have Rapid Urshafu right below it, Pikarom. Pikarom did win Chill earlier that week, so it makes sense that it kind of jumped up in play. Luke Metal kind of fell down back a little bit with only 20 people playing it, but Luke Metal did end up winning this tournament, so again, it is what it is. It is what it is. And then, of course, we got Grass Mewtwo. Again, it's really good. Blounds, Eturn, Mad Party kind of dipped down a bit. Dragapult always seems to be, just sitting at the 10th most played deck of every tournament. I feel like there's, 10 to 20 people that always play Dragapult every week, and it's just really funny to see. Really cool to see, honestly. Okay, so anyway, Lassen here from Japan, he actually won the Limitless Major with Luke Metal. This was his Luke Metal list. And in my opinion, this is a Luke Metal list that I really, really like. I think that 4 Zacian, 2 Luke Metal, 2 Zam is what everyone's going to be playing with Luke Metal. I think that 4 Marnie's really, really good. One thing that's kind of crazy to look at this deck here is we don't have any tag or no quick ball. We literally are running 4 tag calls, but that's it. We're not running any actual way to search out our Zacians or our Zamazentas, which is kind of interesting. And we also have 2 Cynthia Caitlyn, 2 Guzmahala, 2 Malolana. Excuse me. Personally, when I'm playing this deck, I like to play 3 Malolana just because it's so important. And a lot of times, especially when you're playing things like Pikarom or Mewtwo, it's just going to make the difference between you winning that game and not winning that game. So I really like the 3 Malolana, but the 2-2-2 lineup for tag team supporters, totally viable. We got 4 Switch, 4 Saucer, 4 Tag Call, 3 Dolls. We actually have 2 Reset Stamps in the deck with 1 Tool Scrapper, so this is kind of what he cut the Quick Balls for as well. And we have a 2 Cape of Toughness, 2 Metal Goggles, and I think that that's pretty viable as well. I like the 1 Power Plant, 1 Chaotic Swell. The Power Plant does actually help a lot, and ADP as well as Mewtwo if they fail to get down their Chaotic Swell, so that's kind of important there. And we're running 15 energies in the deck total, which I think is also pretty appropriate in Luke Metal. So, yeah, here it is. This is Luke Metal. Kind of my number 1 option right now, actually, as I play my Players' Cup keys. I do think that Luke Metal is a phenomenal deck to be playing for Players' Cup pods. And overall, again, like we said earlier at the beginning of the video, has the highest conversion rate out of any deck right now in this format so far. So absolutely insane. Luke Metal, it's super good. It really is. It's absolutely phenomenal. I guess we could take. I mean, I'm gonna pass on that ADP for now because I want to just take a look at the Spiritomb list. Spiritomb was a deck that a lot of people played at the beginning of the format. We have Escape Rope in here. And this is kind of why people were like, well, we have another card that's a switching card. It's really good. We have Birdkeeper. We have Switch. So I think that the Spike Myth version, right, people were like, well, maybe that would be good. I don't know who came up with it, but somebody did, and somebody decided to play it at the beginning of the Battle Styles format. Did really well. Honestly, did really well with Spike Myth Spiritomb, and I think that that was a pretty cool decision. Still one of my favorite decks to play. Honestly, in my opinion, one of the hardest decks to play right now. The sequencing, to sequence absolutely correctly with this deck is so difficult. You're kind of putting yourself in a position to just make the wrong decision a lot of times. But if you're a really good player and you're comfortable with this list, you can see a lot of success with it. It has a lot of potential, has really great donking potential, and overall is a really just an absolutely phenomenal deck. And here it is. So the Jinx, move damage counters around. Marshadow, get rid of course, the Chaotic Swell, so we can freely put down our Spike Myths. We have the Mew to protect our bench, extremely useful right now against Urshafu. Or a Choreo to draw those extra cards per turn, draw a few cards. It's going to be really, really good. Can be a bit sketchy against ADP, but we have 2 Jirachis to draw more cards, 1 Crobat, 1 Dedenne, 4 Research as well, with 3 Boss, 2 Birdkeeper, more switching options in here with 4 Switch, 4 Escape Rope, 4 Scoop Up Net. So switching is going to be really, really important. And then we have the 4 Quick Ball, 4 Levelable to search out all of the Pokemon in our deck pretty consistently. 2 Ordinary Rods to get those Spiritombs back, or potentially get the Mew back, get a lot of things back. Could be really good. Great catcher on top of the 3 Boss. And we have a Doll in here as well. Again, just acts as another pivot, so another switching card. And then 4 Cape of Toughness, which is almost entirely necessary in this deck for Spiritomb to really get enough damage to one-shot stuff, I think, consistently. So Cape of Toughness can be really, really good there. And then, of course, 4 Spike Myth. That's kind of the main way we're putting damage counters on our own Pokemon, which is kind of what we want when we're playing Spiritomb. And then 4 Hiding Dark, another way to switch with 3 basic dark energies. This list has a lot of synergy. It goes together really, really well. The game plan is really apparent when you're playing Spiritomb. You know what they're going to try to do. You just got to hope that they're not that good at doing it, or they just don't get what they need in order to do it. But I think that Spiritomb's really, really good. And honestly, awesome. Like, I'm super happy to see it get third at this Limitless tournament. It's a super, super cool deck. If we scroll down, we have another Luke Metal, more Eturns, more Grass Mewtwo's, which of course have been really good. ADP, another Luke Metal. But what we have here is Leandra for Fernandez. He's playing Control. He's playing Control. Oh, I copied that to my clipboard. I'll save that one for later. As I spill my drink on myself. Anyway, this is a Control deck that I honestly can't really talk too much about because I don't know anything about Control. But what it kind of seems like here to be is, actually, what does this Muck do? I gotta look into it. When you place Pokemon from a hand to evolve one of your Pokemon to return to me, look at the top 6 cards of your opponent's deck, discard any number of item cards you find there, and your opponent shuffles the other cards back into their deck. So this deck is gonna probably focus around, just remove, like, it's kind of like a mill deck, I suppose, in some ways, where you're going to be constantly evolving your Muck, discarding item cards. We also have Snack Search to shuffle things back into the deck. We have an Absol here, so we're probably going to try to lock some things in the active spot while discarding their energies with Hammer, maybe locking them in there with Galar Mine or Wonder Lab, which is going to be super, super cool. We also have Giratina for energy removal. We have Altaria, which is going to just wall some decks entirely. So this deck has a lot of win cons, to be 100% honest with you. It's really, really cool. I like the Will. I like the Lieutenant Surge. Bill's Analysis, and the Boss. 4 Dolls as well. So this is a really interesting deck. Again, it's kind of going to focus around just surviving for as long as it possibly can, stopping you from doing anything for as long as it can, and hopefully you probably just run out your timer, or you just run out of cards in your deck or options, right? And eventually you either just tie in one of these tournament formats here on Limitless, or you just end up, losing the game to decking out of, running out of cards. So probably not a great option when you're playing the Players Cup pod, since you only have limited, timers on those games. Your actions, you probably can't take too long with a deck like this, but definitely interesting in like a Limitless tournament platform. You probably aren't losing too many games with this deck. Honestly, you're probably tying quite a bit, and you're probably just flat out auto winning against a lot of decks in the format. So it's interesting for sure, and I think that it seems to be somewhat viable. I've never really played a deck like this. I'm not a Control player. I'm not a big fan of the playstyle, but I do recognize that it's a very viable option, and it's cool to have Control at least somewhat viable in the format. And Leandro did get what? Where is he? He got 13th, with his deck, so that's kind of cool. We have an other deck here. Petra, let's take a look at his other deck. So is this Centiskorch? Yeah. I don't know why this was listed in other deck. I guess because there's also a 1-1 Victini lineup in here. This deck is just kind of interesting. So instead of like a 3-3 Centiskorch lineup, we're just running a 2-2 with a 1-1 Victini, which makes the deck a little bit less consistent overall, but kind of fine and helps with a little bit of a matchup spread. I actually like the Hyper Potions here with 13 energies, 4 Hearth. No Fire Crystal, though. 2 Volcanions as your starting option. 2 Eldegoss's as well with Tapu Fini. An interesting list, for sure. I mean, with Welder decks right now, you can kind of take a lot of liberties and play these decks literally just however you want them. Welder is such a good card. There's a lot of really great Fire-type attackers, so there's a lot of freedom that you honestly have when you're building these lists and when you're playing in some of these online tournaments. So, yeah, there you go. That was Limitless this week, which was sweet. I mean, I love the Limitless metas. I literally always love these tournaments. Okay, so those were kind of the 3 biggest standard tournaments of this past week. I guess we can kind of go ahead and take a look at some other tournaments here. On May 1st, so a couple days ago, we actually had Unlisted Lobby, Atlas, Shining Fates, ETB, Secret Rare Quick Ball free, which is kind of cool, actually. Let's take a look at this metagame. So this was a 120-player tournament. Luke Metal was on top. So again, after it won Limitless, people were probably like, let's play this let's play this deck, or maybe not. I don't even know when this timing was, but Rapid Trick, Urshafu, Peak Rom, and ADP was a bit lower. With tournaments that are a little bit smaller sample size, you're going to have sort of a less bigger example of what the metagame could possibly look like, and that's kind of why ADP was so low, I think, because again, only 17 Luke Metals was 13% of the meta. But let's look at the standings, if there's any new decks that we could potentially take a look at. We got Control, ADP, Luke Metal, Eturn, Rapid Strike, Urshafu. I guess we can go ahead and take a look at this Victini Mewtwo. I don't know if we looked at one last week, but this is an extremely viable deck as well. It's literally just Welder Mewtwo, but we have a 3-3 Victini lineup in here. So it's kind of just split. Again, like we're kind of mixing archetypes at this point in the format, but this deck is phenomenal, and I like the 2 Fan of Waves. Knock off those coding energies. Mewtwo and Mew, Welder variant with Charizard GX and Reshiram Charizard Heatran. Those are going to be literally all you need sometimes to just dominate some matchups. We have Volcanion, which is a great starting option. We definitely want to go second with the deck. And Victini VMAX is going to be phenomenal against other VMAX archetypes, things like Rapid Chick, Urshafu, or even Eturn. So I really do like this this deck. I do. I mean, you have a lot of options. It's super consistent, and it's definitely very, 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 very cool. It really is. So take it in. We've seen a lot of different Welder decks right now, archetypes. It's just one of those things where, like, Welder is, you have a lot more kind of freedom of expressing yourself when you're playing Welder right now. You have so many options to play to go with Welder, so it's just honestly interesting to see what everyone has been doing right now in the Battle Styles format. I think that just having a great Psychic type attacker in your Welder deck is really good, and I think that's where Welder Mewtwo obviously has a really big advantage right now in the format. So I think that that's a really smart decision to run Welder with Mewtwo, which is a Psychic type Pokemon. What else we got here that we could look at? We have a Deci. Let's take a look at this Deci list. Why not? Yeah, okay. So this is decidueye. We're running like the big charm, tag call, Malilana, Guzmahala engine, which I think is probably the best way to play decidueye right now. We got the 3 Roses, 2 Snorlax to draw cards. Mew to protect our bench, Tapu Fini for things like Blacephalon, or Tempozard, things like that, which is probably something that you might struggle a bit with, but Fini's definitely going to help with that as well. And we have the Apom as well, which is kind of a way to just auto-win against Luke Metal, and I think that Apom is really phenomenal. I don't suggest playing Decidueye in Players' Cup pods, just because your timers are probably going to run out. Unless you can play this list really quickly and really consistently, I just don't find it to be a great option for Players' Cup personally. But I do think that the Apom does help with the Luke Metal matchup. It's just a smart list overall. I mean, Decidueye has the potential to win at all times, but with the amount of Welder running around and the amount of like Luke Metal and stuff, it's just kind of unlikely, realistically, that you end up winning a lot of tournaments with Decidueye right now, at least. But I think that it's still a pretty good option overall. So yeah, I mean, nothing else I kind of really want to look at here that got super high up in this tournament. But Unlisted Lobby, great event there. I guess we'll just quickly take a look at one more before we get out of here. So that was down here, 126 players. Okay, so yeah, on the 30th, we actually had Mew Squad number 13, number 16, free entry here. 120 players as well. Liam Kidd did win with Peak. Let's take a look at his winning Peak Realm list, see if it's any different than the last one that we saw. No, I mean, it's literally the exact same 60. So again, if you're playing Peak, this is probably the list you should be playing. In my opinion, I think it's super good, and it definitely has the potential to win. I mean, Peak Realm is so phenomenal. Even if the format isn't too kind to it sometimes with all the Urshafus, I think that it's such a good deck that it can honestly win at any time. So shout out to Liam Kid there. Okay, it looks like we have a greenzard in here, so we haven't looked at a greenzard yet. Yet another way to play a welder deck. This is just going to be straight Reshizard with Volcanions and Green's Exploration, which is going to be the way that we mainly find our cards here. Kant is the guy that played this list. He's actually done extremely well recently with Greenzard. It's super, super good. Between the big charms, the heat energies, we have a Malalata in the deck. This Reshiram and Charizard is honestly just, it turns into like a VMAX Pokemon, which is just, it's just super, super good. We have a bunch of 1-ups in the deck. As you can see here, we got Fire Crystal, Great Potion, E-Spinner, Great Catcher, Tool Scrapper, Doll, Vitality Band, even just a 1-up Hearth with Malalana, Tag Switch, Cynthia Caitlyn. These are all things that like it's going to be hard to just draw into them when you need to, but you have Green's Exploration, which at any point you can search your deck for 2 trainer cards. So a lot of times, right, you just have Greens after you Welder. If you have energies on your Pokemon, you can literally just Greens and find whatever you might need, whether it's Stamp, Doll, Power. We have 2 Power Plants in the deck. It's just ridiculous. This deck has a lot of answers, and it's honestly a really difficult deck to play because you have so many options, and you really need to grab exactly what you need, and you need to know exactly what you need when you're playing this deck. So for someone like me, who doesn't have a lot of experience with Welder decks or Greens decks, this wouldn't be the deck that I would play, personally. But for somebody who does have a lot of experience with a list like this, it has a lot of potential and a really high skill gap when you're playing this deck. So I really, really like this Greenzard list a lot. I think it's good. And again, yet another way to play Welder decks, which is crazy. We've looked at like 10 different ones so far. If I scroll down, literally, I mean, I don't think there's anything that we haven't looked at already, unfortunately. But, I mean, the decks that we looked at right now are pretty much the only decks that are honestly worth playing. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's just one of those things where, you might have, 10 to 15 decks that are at least somewhat viable in any format. And because of that, there's just not too many that we can look at. But we did take a look at the examples from this past week of online tournaments, and hopefully you guys get an idea of what the meta looks like right now. Big shout out to Dino Data for helping with the data analytics and getting those statistics for us. Definitely really, really viable and really awesome. And big shout out to Limitless for keeping records of all of these awesome tournaments that are coming up. So that's going to be it. We're going to get out of here. 36 minutes of me talking, so I do apologize in a sense. To be honest with you. But before we get out of here, guys, please register for Chill Series number, technically number 30, but it's the last chance qualifier. It's going to be a good one. Again, free entry, 250 Battle Styles packs in the prize pool. If you win this tournament, you get access, you get entry, you get to qualify for the 16th spot in our invitational tournament. It's going to be phenomenal. I really, really can't wait. Big shout out to PTCGO Zone for sponsoring this tournament. Like I said, guys, if you're ranked in the top 15, you're actually not allowed to play because you already qualified for the Invitational. So if you don't know where your rankings are for Chill Series, you can click this link right here. It'll bring you to the rankings. Yeah, first place gets 60 packs, so go check it out. It's going to be super cool. Link to register for this tournament is down in the description below. I'm going to get out of here, guys. I've been Matty from Chill TCG. Let me know if you guys like these videos. I've been doing these meta-analyses every week, or I try to do them every week. Hopefully they're good for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy them. If there's anything else you would like differently, just let me know. Honestly, just let me know. This is kind of a way for me to showcase the entire meta and the entire community of online tournaments, given every week. We're not the only tournament, so it's nice to give a shine to some of the other tournaments who, might not make content themselves on their tournaments, right? So, that's kind of the idea of this. But let me know in the comment section below. What would you change about this video? What would you improve on it? What would you like to see differently? But I'm going to get out of here, guys. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you like the content, and potentially become a channel member. Big shout out to all the channel members. Those guys are the reason why we're able to do this every week. So thank you guys so much. But here it is, Chill Series LCQ. Go sign up. It's going to be sweet. All right, I'm going to get out of here, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Peace out.